Hello, welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore or unravel, I'm not sure which, home cooking in a modern world. I'm Linda and I'm here with my friend Paul. Hello, Paul.
You're whispering again.
Am I?
You've got the low podcast voice happening.
I don't know.
It always takes when you're doing your intro.
I'm trying to remember what
sure.
to say. No, because I haven't yet got it nailed, and
We'll
now I've
paint
just
it up on the wall.
That would look great. What to say? How I'm going to say it? Because as you know, we don't script, and maybe we should start.
Nah.
How are you?
I'm all right.
How are you? It's Friday today, so this is
Friday.
a catch up.
Yep. Quick one. It won't be the 50-minute
epic
monologue.
But that was good. That's like sometimes how you and I end off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
tangents.
But I did want to say something about at the end of we talked about in the last episode, for those who haven't yet listened, small plates and the impact that food can have on setting a tone of a meeting or a meal and so on. And at the end of all that, you did talk about the spice mix and using phyllo.
Oh, did I?
Well, it was either recorded or it was just you and I afterwards. I'm never sure. But we took it home. So you made a sort of a samosa spice mix.
Well, no, I made samosas.
Samosas,
and
yes.
I had a spice mix in
And but you did it with phyllo pastry rather than the traditional way.
Yeah, I think I talked about using phyllo pastry because I was thinking, well, we don't often do, like I don't probably do enough of that. There's a lot of recipes and it's quite good. And it's a real, for me, phyllo pastry really highlights how good a combi steam oven can make things crisp. And that's one of the reasons why I thought, maybe I need to do a bit more. So anyway, and it was also off the back of talking to a chef mate of mine that I haven't spoken to in a while. And I don't know how we got onto the conversation, but I said to him, I remember those sort of samosa things you used to do? He's like, yeah. And I said, hit me up, give me an idea of what was in it. And realistically, it was very just base level. It was more base level than the recipes you've recently provided me with. It was just a bunch of, bit of this, bit of that. That's how it sort of led to what it ended up being.
Well, I'd had that fairly big lunch. It was at the end of a long day, and you were just finishing off making them, so they came out of the oven hot.
Yeah.
And I had one.
Yeah.
And it was hot, temperature-wise hot.
Yeah.
And
not chilly hot.
No, not chilly hot, not just temperature-wise hot, and it was fantastic. And there was a few left over, so I took them home, and Doug and I had them for lunch the next day.
Okay.
Because I was working from home yesterday, and I must say, even those few hours overnight in the fridge, back into the combi steam oven on Regenerate, just on, I think Doug put them on 120.
Yeah.
Even then, they were still fantastic, and the mix was great, and a simple idea. It was a simple idea, and I could have fought Doug for his, and I know he was looking at my plate because I'm a bit of a slower eater, and I know he was looking at the one I hadn't eaten yet, thinking, is she going to eat that or not? And that's always that was such a simple thing, and yet so effective, and I would never have thought, and I know that you and I have these conversations, and I see a recipe as a process, and because I'm a process person, I stick to that process. And you're like, no, it's always a guide. No, and that's the difference. I would never have thought of that, and yet, that mix and the simplicity of it, and how easy it was to eat. It was so great, and I thought, you can even do them in little muffin tins with that phyllo, and make smaller ones for.
Well, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. But I had to wait for you to actually change it from the traditional way that I love samosas to something small, and it was yum. And that mix inside was fantastic, I must say.
Yeah, and very easy to make, and a few ingredients, but nonetheless, easy to make, doesn't take long. Another proof point that, while a steam oven is good, it's only as good as the other tools that you have with it,
Yes.
I just thought, why not? We'll bash it up and we'll do a video, make it a recipe on the website.
It was great. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, and it's vegetarian. It's not vegan. It's vegetarian, but could be vegan. potentially.
What makes it not vegan? What did you put?
Ghee.
Oh, okay.
And the pastry. I'm not sure what's in filet pastry. I actually need to find out. I should know. I'm assuming there's some butter in filet pastry. Might be oil. I don't know. But you could certainly... could you? Yeah, you could certainly change it to be vegan. There's nothing in the mix that isn't vegan. There's coconut cream and oil, but there's no meat product.
There's coconut cream?
Tiny bit, yeah.
Wow, okay.
And just the thickest part of the coconut cream. So quite often, this is what I do when I buy coconut cream. I will always try and find, because it's generally in a tin, right? I will always try and find the dustiest, oldest tin. No, the reason being is that the coconut cream and the water, over time, when the tin sits there and sits there and sits there and sits there, it splits. And so what happens is that when you open a tin like that of coconut cream, you just have the solid cream sitting on the top. And quite often that's the bit that I want to use, and I don't want it to be in liquid form. So it was literally the cream and all the coconut water had sunk to the bottom, which I didn't want. I didn't want extra liquid. I just wanted the cream, real essence of the coconut cream. And yes, it breaks down when you heat it, but nonetheless, it's not as liquid. So that's why, depending on what I'm buying, I'll always go for the dirtiest, dustiest old tin that I can find, because I know it will have split. Generally, you can pick them up and shake them anyway. And if you shake them and you hear nothing, it means it's split. Because the liquid has got nowhere to move, so you can't hear it moving in the tin. If you pick up a can of coconut cream and you shake it and you hear it moving, it's all mixed. It hasn't split at all. It's still together.
Okay, that leads to a whole lot of questions in my head. Like,
anyway,
why? How do you even know that? How do you know that? And why would you just use that sort of amount? Like, are you talking like half a small can? Are you talking?
I took 2 tablespoons of like the solid cream off the top. That's it. For that particular recipe.
And there was no substitute for that?
No, I wanted the richness of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how you know these things. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, because I take a can of coconut cream, I give it a good shake,
yeah.
I pull off the lid and I stick it into my red Thai curry.
Yeah.
That's probably the only thing I use
But when you pour it in, it's a liquid, yeah?
Yeah, and it is quite thick, but I certainly get rid of all, I try to stir in that thick cream.
I wanted the opposite for this.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I didn't want to add too much. I'd already added some liquid. I didn't want to add too much liquid. And I didn't want an overbearing coconut flavour. I wanted the richness from it. So I thought, well, by just adding the cream that sits on top.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a product that other than for...
Well, you don't necessarily have to do it
like
this.
I'm just saying, I don't know much about it. I don't
know a great deal about it.
I do know it makes, if you add some coconut milk and some condensed milk and some rum, it makes a nice drink.
Mm.
Well, a bit sweet, but nice.
Add some eggs and make a caramel and you got a leche flan.
Hello.
Yeah. So
there we go. Okay.
Now let's not get into uses of coconut cream.
No, but I did. I'm just interested in how you would know that. But the little sort of, it was the size of a spring roll.
Yeah,
little spring roll that you might get at a restaurant. But it was just so tasty and easy, and with that
cucumber
yogurt tzatziki that you made on the side.
Wasn't tzatziki?
Wasn't it?
No.
Just cucumber yogurt.
Yeah, cucumber, coriander, a little bit of lemon juice.
So what's tzatziki?
Generally garlic.
Oh, okay.
Cucumber, mint. Yogurt. Yeah, that's more. I think they call it raita.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
okay.
more Indian.
Okay.
And just going back to that, I actually, funnily enough, I was watching my favourite TV chef last night, Rick Stein.
Rick Stein, yes.
And he was...
We love Rick Stein.
He was doing his India thing and talking to...
Yes.
Funny, he was actually in a very high-end hotel kitchen, and what they had done in there, because obviously you've got a whole bunch of highly trained chefs that are taught to do this and that and process driven, the Linda McGowan version of cooking.
Oh yes.
What they had done within this high-end hotel is actually hire a home cook, and she was the best cook in the kitchen, and she was hired there so people could get that taste of home cooking, and she was very much of the bit of this, and I think if you look at the way people cook globally, I think especially mastering something like the vast amount of spices that particularly Indian cuisine or Indian, Sri Lankan, that sort of belt, Pakistani, the high volume of spices that they use and the deft touch that they have without measurement is like mastery of its own. And that's what makes India. I was thinking about it last night, sitting there thinking, I very much am drawn and have been for a long time drawn to French cooking and French cuisine, and be it modern or classic or bistro or whatever, because I like the technique, right? So the technique side of it appeals to me. And yes, there is a process to it as well, but the technique appeals to me, and their thinking behind simplistic ingredients, but the best ingredients. I really, really like that. And so I was sitting there thinking, and I actually sort of said it to myself in my head, French to me is the home of technique. Although Indian cuisine certainly has its own technique, but as far as technique goes, in cooking technique, I think the French probably, in my eyes, is the home of technique. But somewhere like India is the home of flavour. Like they just know. And having gone there and experienced it myself and eaten the food in Mumbai, like it is the home of flavour, and just the deft touch for you and I would never ever consider putting like 3 heaped spoons of red chili powder into for want of a better term, but a curry for, let's say, the two of us, right? That's a lot of chili. But the way that it's balanced with things like black pepper, turmeric, ginger, garlic, all of these things are brought together with just nonchalant ease, that I think that's the brilliance behind that cuisine. And I don't want to pigeonhole it all, because north to south it's very, very different, but the way that they use particularly spice and how good they are with volumes and amounts and matching it to proteins and all different sorts of things, that for me like is flavour town.
I agree. I've seen with Rick Stein and some of the other shows, but there was one lady who was making a something, and she had this little like a grinder, but in went an enormous amount of garlic and chili and onion and made a paste.
I mean, you could say the same thing. And
I just thought at the time, wow, but it didn't look overpowering, and I think Rick Stein said not overpowering at all.
Yeah, you could say the same thing about a lot of cuisines. It's only because I had Indian on my mind, but Thai cuisine, using a mortar and pestle and crushing bird's eye chilies and shallots and lime leaves and galangal and ginger and garlic and all these super pungent things that go into what is a dish for one or two, that you and I, as a sort of European, for want of a better term, Europeans wouldn't even sort of consider that to be palatable, just by going, Jesus, am I really adding that much chili? And you'd probably naturally just sort of pare it back a bit and go, well, maybe not, But the way that it's balanced, the way that it's used with other things that it's going with, that's where I think the skill and art in cooking is learning from the home cooks. I think the home cooks, chefs are different, right? They're very, very different kettle of fish. I think some of those sort of home cooks, like the woman who's working in this hotel, that's the best thing that hotel could do from a business perspective, because people want, not always, but people want home food, home cooked food. They want the taste like mum used to make. Now, it might be very particular in that region of India that's worked. I'm not saying it's going to work everywhere, but it's pretty clever. Going off tangents.
Is that going to make you have a curry or make an Indian dish this weekend?
I've actually got a lamb shoulder out. So.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, that's one place I actually, like, I had as you know, when I was working in India, I had a very difficult time. It was a hell of a trip, like very hard working conditions. Didn't sort of end up, what I was sort of told was going to happen before I got there, and what actually was expected and what actually ended up happening were three very different things. It was like a long year that year and an awkward trip, but nonetheless, like, that is a place that I will absolutely return to, just for the food.
No, wow.
Like, I couldn't care less about anything in India other than the food.
Oh, we're not...
Yeah, I'm allowed, like...
Not offending anybody here, but no, just for the food. Well...
Yeah, and the importance that it plays in the entire culture, like, it's, I know it plays importance in a lot of cultures, but over there it's unbelievable. But it's only topical because I was just thinking about it. I'll change my mind and say Thai food's the best food in the world next week. Like, who knows? It depends on what I'm cooking. But
I know you do like, French cooking, and as you said, it's a lot of influence for how you cook. But you've never really expressed a favourite. You like elements.
Yeah. You
don't certainly just lean on one type of cuisine.
No, and I mean, my whole opinion, and I suppose a lot of it comes down to, like, where you've been, what you've experienced. I was actually talking to my partner the other night, and we did that. Okay, what's the best thing you've ever eaten? What's the single best or two best things you've ever eaten? And the funny thing that we both decided was that it's not only about what you eat, it's about where you are, the entire experience of what it is that makes it as good as it was.
Yeah.
So, I certainly don't have a favourite. I had a absolute, like, light bulb moment eating pizza in Italy, because I never was a big fan of pizza. Pizza was, go out after work, have a few beers, feeling a bit scaly and seedy when you get home, can't be bothered cooking, need something, ring up, get a pizza. Like, yeah, it might be a wood-fired pizza, but I have a whole new appreciation since eating pizza in Italy. And I actually sat there and I said to myself, okay, I get it. Because I got it, because the dough was that good. And it was similar with pasta. So the way I cook pasta now, since my trip to Italy, has changed. And I didn't even go to the best part of the world for pasta or pizza, but I got it. And I was like, okay, right, I get it now. I understand. And I've always made fresh pasta. I always liked fresh pasta, but it's also not just about that.
No.
And a lot of it's about where you are, what you do, the experience, and all the rest of it. But I've always liked Indian food. Always loved it, and liked the idea behind the regionality, specifically around Indian food, because it is so different.
It's a vast country, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of Wow. Okay. So you're going to make a.
I will probably do a curry. Yes.
Woohoo.
This weekend. But you see, then again, I mean, the one thing I have learnt from, and there's not many food programs that I watch, but I do watch Rick Stein, and the one thing I did learn is curry's not really a thing.
No,
it's an English. It's a word that almost Indians made up to give to the English to take back. So, yeah.
I've heard it expressed as a sort of more like a gravy. You can say this is a sort of gravy.
Well, that's. Sauce. I mean, he himself was asking Indians throughout his travels, what does the word curry mean to you? And they just said gravy. So it's this sort of ubiquitous term that has become like how you identify Indian cuisine. It's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't mean anything. So saying I'm making a curry is probably I would find that more offensive than anything else I've ever said on this podcast.
Well, there you are. Okay.
But yeah, curry, got some videos to edit. So we'll get
reuse the rethink the use of phyllo.
Yes. Oh well, maybe not rethink the use of phyllo,
but
if you,
I think it's gone out of vogue. I think it has definitely gone out of vogue.
Oh no, a lot of sort of Greek, Turkish food uses phyllo pastry often. I don't think it's out of vogue.
Okay.
You just haven't bought it for a while. Just because you haven't bought it for a while doesn't mean it's out of vogue.
What were the things we used to do remember, I'm 200 years old, so there was a lot of phyllo back in the 70s, and in the same way we used to have, chicken and apricot casseroles and phyllo pastry with things, and food go, styles of food or things go in and out of vogue, but I would have thought phyllo, not as popularly seen or maybe not used as much.
Well, I certainly don't think it's one you'd be attempting to make from scratch at home.
No.
Like, I don't actually know how it's done. But I think it's a good thing to have. I think it's a very hard thing to keep. It doesn't freeze well, because it just shatters. And of course, when you're using it, you need to keep it not damp, but
quick. You need to move quickly.
Yeah, you need to move quickly, so it can be a little bit awkward. But I actually like it, and I like it for those sorts of things, like almost those. Okay, rather than have your traditional spring roll as an example, rather than get spring roll wrappers, go to the same amount of work and effort. Why wouldn't you just use some phyllo pastry and bake it rather than deep fry it?
Yeah.
So any of those sort of almost snacky type.
And it was so crispy.
Yeah.
Were amazing.
Super crispy, and it was only one layer too. So quite often when you're using phyllo, you use 2 or 3 layers, and it can become a little bit too pastry heavy. Sometimes you need it depending on your filling. So like, and I'm going to say this wrong, but spanakopita, stuff like that, because the filling's a bit denser and a bit heavier, and it's got moisture content from spinach and cheese and all sorts of other stuff, you need extra layers. But I actually like the fact that it was just a single layer. Yes, it was rolled, but it was a single layer.
Yeah, so crispy. It was great. Well, thank you for that.
Well, I don't know what you think.
Oh, well, we're just sort of cooking. It's a wrap up for the week. It's been a long week.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of things this week. It does feel like a long week.
It does.
And
treacle tart's coming next week. That's going to happen.
Yeah, I heard you. Yes, you started to make the breadcrumbs.
Well, I've made the breadcrumbs. It's never been interrupted by everything else today. So that's as far as I have weighed out some of the ingredients. So they're kind of sitting there, and I'm now lacking motivation to finish it off this afternoon before the end of the day. So I'm not going to do it.
I know.
Sometimes that's a good thing to note too. If you don't feel like cooking, sometimes you just need to walk away and not do it, because the end result won't be as good. Go and cook something else.
Or go and do something else.
Come back to it later. Yeah, come back to it later.
That's a good hit. There you are. Thanks.
Finish off with a pearl.
Well, enjoy your weekend.
And you.
For everybody out there, happy cooking, and have a great weekend.
See you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.